Hey everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys are having an awesome day. I thought I'd, do something a little bit different and talk about my favorite movies, and specifically my top 15 favorite movies of all time. We're gonna go through them one at a time and maybe tell you a little bit about the movie if you're not familiar, and maybe why I like it specifically. Now, I have two honorable mentions. I'm gonna save them for the end of the video. And if you've been subscribed to the channel for a while, you might have noticed that the odd time, maybe once every 3 or 4 months, I'll do a movie review. Either by myself or with friends or dad, family members. So, this channel is mostly about hockey and sports, but every now and then you get some movie talk, and I'm pretty excited to do this video. So let's get into it. Here is my 15th favorite movie. It is Inception. And I'll put it up on the screen here next to me, the movie poster. So I'm sure that 98% of you watching have probably seen Inception, so I don't really need to, probably for any of these videos, explain the plot, but Inception is one of those movies that just kind of thinks outside the box, almost literally. it's a movie about dream states and different levels of those worlds. I guess it's really hard to wrap your brain around a little bit. There's so many layers. It gets so convoluted at times, and even at the end of the movie, you're still kind of questioning things a little bit. But graphically and visually, it's amazing. It's led by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is one of Hollywood's biggest actors for probably the past 25, 30 years. And it's a journey that makes you think. And a lot of movies are pretty mindless, like all the Marvel movies and stuff. There's nothing wrong with those movies, but they're quite mindless. They don't really make you think. You just kind of sit back and you ingest. This one actually forces you to ingest and then think about what you've just ingested and kind of question things a little bit. So it's a really interesting movie. If you like, I guess it's not really sci-fi, but if you like an action movie based around science fiction, I guess that may be the best way to describe it. You probably like this. Number 14 is Good Will Hunting. Now, this is a movie that's pretty slow in pacing. It's long and methodical, and there's not big action scenes or fighting or anything like that. It's a story about a brilliant mathematician, basically, who works as a janitor, and it's about his relationship with life and how he gets along, and the relationship that he builds with some other characters in the movie. And by characters, I mean Matt Damon is big by himself, but you've got Ben Affleck's in there, and Robin Williams as well is in there. So this would probably be on a lot of people's probably at least top 50 movies, but I really like it. It's not a typical Neil movie that I would like, but it was well written, it was well acted, and it's a really good movie. It's as long as you're okay with the slow pacing. That's good. Number 13, October Sky. So if you are new to the channel, maybe don't know a lot about me, I'm a big sci-fi nerd. I really like anything to do with space, aviation, NASA, anything like that. So October Sky, it's not really about NASA or space, but it's about rockets and physics. It centers around a boy who's growing up working under his dad at a coal mine, and he really wants to aspire to do more. And he's a really smart boy, he's a really smart kid, or a young adult, and he has a passion for physics and rockets. He gets inspired, and he wants to build rockets. His father, the old school, resistant to change, rough and tumble guy who, he's a coal miner, he doesn't take crap, and anything to do with rocketry, physics, anything that takes him away from being a coal miner, he doesn't like that about his son. So he's really resistant towards that the entire movie, and the movie is about the young man's passion for physics and rocketry and stuff, but really at the same time the movie is about the father-son relationship. So it's not a good movie all the way through. Like there's difficult parts to watch and stuff based on that father-son relationship. Some questionable things happen, but it's a really, really good movie. I 100% recommend it if you do like stories like that. Number 12, I put Shawshank Redemption. This is a movie based around an escape, I guess, from a prison. It's it's got incredible performances all across the board. It's unique. I mean, there's been similar movies, I guess, in a way, but just the acting performances and the throughout the movie, throughout the entire movie, is pretty special. You have, if you think about Morgan Freeman's greatest movies, I don't know if this would be on the list or in the top three, but he plays a very pivotal role in this movie. He plays it very well. Tim Robbins also plays an incredible, fantastic job. There's obviously some spoilers in this movie, so I don't want to say too much about it, but I would highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. Number 11, the only, I guess you consider musical on this list, is Rockstar. Mark Wahlberg, Jennifer Aniston. Now, I don't like musicals at all, and this probably isn't technically considered a musical, but I mainly listen to this style of music, and it's about a guy who inspires, a talented guy who inspires to audition or to play alongside his favorite band, and he gets that opportunity. He can't believe it that he has that opportunity, but he goes with it, and he doesn't nail the audition, but it's a little rocky, and I won't say any more than that, but it's a pretty good movie. Musically, for me, it's a really good movie. I really like that genre and style of music. Even like when it was released, I was really big into it then. Not so much now, but back then. And one of my favorite artists, a couple of different artists, play the music throughout, singing, drums, guitar. That's all done by actual musicians. So, for example, the guitar, I knew right away just by listening to the tone of the guitar, the pinch harmonics and stuff. I knew that Zakk Wylde contributed to this movie in some way, and sure enough, I looked it up and he had. So certain good guitarists have their own sound, and Zakk Wylde definitely has his with his pinch harmonics and stuff. But it's just a really good music movie. I don't want to classify it as a musical, but it's a really good music movie. You should watch it if you haven't seen it. Number 10, Saving Private Ryan, a really, really cool war movie. And war movies are bad. People die. It's gruesome. There's death. I get that. Not a lot of people like war movies. But as far as war movies go, the story and the journey behind this movie is pretty special. So Private Ryan is a soldier in, I think he has three brothers. He has two or three. It's been a while since I actually watched this movie. But I think he has three other brothers who have died in the war. And he's the only member left of his family, basically. So a group is sent in to save that boy and bring him out and return him home. So his mother and father, I believe, I know the mother was specifically there. I don't know about the father, but to lose four boys to the war is a pretty devastating thing. So they wanted to bring him out, and so that family would have one of their children still alive. So the journey is about them trying to find Private Ryan and get him out. It's a fantastic movie. Tom Hanks, obviously I don't have to tell you who Tom Hanks is. Pretty incredible. Definitely watch that if you haven't seen it. Number 9, I put Star Wars, the original one. Now, you'll notice a couple of different trends throughout my rankings here, but I could have easily chosen 4 other Star Wars movies from the entire collection, but I went with the first one because I really like the initial movie, the character development movie in a trilogy or an entire series. It's slower, it's more methodical, but to me, I like the escalation of character. I like learning more about each one. Initially, there's not as much action usually in the first movie as there is in the second or third movie and beyond. The first one is about creating the story, and I like that. Don't get me wrong, I like the action stuff too, but I like the creation of the universe first. So that's really what this one comes down to, and I don't really need to explain Star Wars to you. Number 8, Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. So again, for the same reasons, The Fellowship of the Ring was the first Lord of the Rings movie. It's not technically the first in the timeline of everything, but it's the first that was released. And it was the movie that built the character for Frodo, and we saw all the main characters come to the screen for the first time and come alive, and we really got to get on board with that journey into the second and third movie, and then the other ones as well, like The Hobbit and that stuff. So this movie, it's obviously slower. Like I said, the first one always is. It is quite a slow movie, but storyline wise, story building wise, it is definitely my favorite. Number 7, the only comedy actually on my list, Step Brothers, Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly. This combination has been in tons of movies. Talladega Nights. I mean, there's probably like 7 different movies, or 7 to 10 different movies that these guys have starred in together, which is amazing. But Step Brothers to me is, you could say that it's a typical comedy, but it's just such an outlandish premise to have these two man-childs with almost the same personality just battle back and forth. And I've probably seen this movie at least 30 times. It's something I could watch probably 2 or 3 times a year and never get sick of. That's how much I like it. If I know that Will Ferrell gets a lot of hate and a lot of people just really can't stand the guy, and I understand that. I can completely, there's no right or wrong. If you dislike it, I'm not saying that you should like him. I get that argument. But for me, I really like Will Ferrell. He's just stupid on purpose, and it's just dumb. I like the humor. It's a pretty cool movie. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. Number 6, Castaway. So another Tom Hanks movie, and I don't think a lot of people would have this on their list. I think a lot of people consider this movie to be boring, uneventful, and I don't necessarily disagree. It is slightly boring and slow, and it's, for the most part, uneventful. The entire movie is based around a guy who gets stuck on an island and how he learns to survive, and if or when he escapes the island. I won't, if you haven't seen it, I won't ruin it for you, but it's a journey about a man seeing how much of a man he actually is, and seeing what kind of skills he has to develop, not only physically but mentally on the island to stay alive. So it's a pretty basic movie. There's one actor for the most part the entire movie, and that's not a typical movie. You think about all the characters in a Marvel movie. How many people you actually see in a Marvel movie? There's hundreds, maybe 1,000 with the background actors and stuff. There's really, for 90% of this movie, 95 maybe even, there's just one person. And if you accept that, and if you're okay with how slow it is, and you don't have these big musical moments that lead up to something, you're okay with the silence, and you just really appreciate the story and his journey, I think you'd really, really like this movie. And I understand why you wouldn't, though, because it's not a typical movie. Number 5, I have Ghostbusters. So this movie was actually released before I was born. I think it was 1984, if I'm not mistaken. I'm looking at the poster now, and I don't see the year on it, but I'm pretty sure it was 1984. And again, I could probably choose other Ghostbuster movies in the franchise, but the first one was the one that's most special to me. It creates the universe. We learn about the characters. It's completely new. It's different. Think about all the typical war movies and the space movies, and there's medieval movies. Like, they're all kind of the same. The Spartan movies, but Ghostbusters is kind of one of its own. There's Beetlejuice vibes a little bit, but Ghostbusters was really almost revolutionary in a way. It sparked so many things. It sparked a love for a specific genre of movies, and there was comedy in it as well. So you have something that's very intense, maybe you could consider even scary, but there's also humor in it at the same time. And at that time, I think that was relatively uncommon and unpopular in the world of Hollywood. So this kind of broke some boundaries as far as movies in Hollywood goes, and it's just a really great movie. I mean, you see kids dress up as Ghostbusters. I think even in Stranger Things, if you've seen that, there's a scene where it's Halloween and they dress up, and I believe they actually dress up as Ghostbusters. So it's a pretty special movie. If you haven't seen it, you should really watch it. Number 4, Interstellar. So this really is specific to me because of my love for space, and this really combines great storytelling with space. And what's cool about the movie, even though some of it is a bit far-fetched and maybe it obviously wouldn't happen, and it's a little cheesy because there's a lot of hidden storylines around love and stuff, but there's been literal scientific papers written to produce this movie that are now considered factual, and this is real science, and they would have never figured some of this stuff out without preparing for this movie. So It's a really cool thing where they actually had to figure out and do calculations and figure out what would happen in this situation. That's pretty cool when a movie can literally advance science in a way, and it has, and it's a very intense movie. The score of this movie is probably one of the best of any movie I've ever watched. I absolutely love the score. Hans Zimmerman, if you're familiar with that name, he's done a ton of movies. He's probably one of the most famous in the industry. Matt Damon's in this movie, which surprised a lot of people, including myself. Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, Jessica Chastain, Michael Caine. It's just a great lineup, and it's a fun movie to watch. And it's based on the future. I kind of like those futuristic space movies. Number 3, Jurassic Park. Now, I grew up in the 90s, so when Jurassic Park came out, I was maybe 7 or 6, between like 6 and 8, something like that. So it was actually pretty scary to me at the time. I remember the scene where the glass kind of breaks in down on top of them, and the T-Rex's mouth is, trying to get at them. That was a pretty scary scene to me as a kid, but I loved it at the same time. And much like Ghostbusters, this really kind of steps aside and does something really unique. It's taking a world that used to exist and bring it to the future. They bring back dinosaurs. They create that, and they kind of turn it into an amusement park. And although I don't know if it's completely factual, I don't know if they could actually do this. I think there was some papers written that they could, but it wouldn't be the same. I don't really know. This isn't a scientific video. I'm just whatever. It's a really cool world that they built because it's not about aliens or something that doesn't exist, like ghosts or in aliens or whatever. These are actual creatures that did exist. Now, there have been some clarifications throughout the years on what a T-Rex actually looks like. They think it maybe had more feathers now, and same with the Velociraptor. They believe it actually had some feathers, and it doesn't actually look like it does in the original movie. So and this is a movie too that sparked a lot of. This is kind of a groundbreaking movie. It kind of changed the world for a lot of kids. Kids went into that one, whatever that word is, that one. Kids went to study this stuff, and it really changed a lot for the world of science as well. And Jurassic Park has exploded. It's in some of the Universal lots. We're seeing movies still coming out this day on that world. And there's been at least 5 Jurassic Park movies throughout its entire franchise. And I think there's one more coming. Maybe it's 6 and there's another one coming. I don't know. But anyways, I really like the original Jurassic Park movie. It's best in my opinion. Number 2, The Matrix. The Matrix is kind of like Inception, where you kind of have to understand that there's different layers of reality, I guess. The short version is it's our world today, but it's not real. It's for the most part, a computer simulation. The real world is underground in a city called Zion, and there is a chosen one, Neo, and Morpheus is kind of the leader of Zion, and he knows that Neo is the one. Neo doesn't really believe it. Some other people don't as well, but they go on a journey trying to take out the agents and take out a bunch of other stuff. They're in hiding. I don't want to give too much of the movie away. If you haven't seen it, you should really go watch it. It's completely different than anything you've ever watched before. It'll make you think. I love the character development in it. It's a brilliant movie, 100%. Like, I watch it at least once a year. It's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, you have to watch it. I really probably should have chosen number 2. That was the most action-packed, and I think best fight scenes was in number 2. But number 1 was where everything was created and everything was built. So I like to go with the first movie in the franchises. And number 1, Apollo 13. Probably not number 1 on literally anyone else's list who is watching this, but Apollo 13 is one of the only movies on this list that's based around a true story. So Apollo 11 was the first one to land on the moon. Neil Armstrong, yada yada yada. I'm actually named after Neil Armstrong, and that kind of propelled my love as a kid into space and everything. So when Apollo 13 came out, and I think it came out in like 1996, this was a pretty big movie for me, even as a kid. I was like 10 years old at the time. And I remember watching it. I remember loving it, and I've I want to say I've seen this movie probably 40 times at least 40 times. I've got this movie on DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K. Like whenever a new version of this movie releases in higher quality, I buy it. That's how much I love it. So I don't want to give too much away if you haven't seen it. But Apollo 11, land on the moon, first man on the moon, yada, yada, yada. Apollo 12, boring. Apollo 13, something actually happens on the way to the moon, and it causes difficulties for some of the astronauts, and they have to kind of react to those difficulties, as well as Houston down below on the ground. They have to try and figure out some things as well. So it's about the survival of astronauts in space and trying to get them to come back home and how they're going to do that. And there's different ways they can do that, and they have to try and figure that out. I don't want to give it away if you haven't seen it, but this is based on a true story. Literally everything in this movie actually happened. Well, I'll say 98% of all the big things in this movie actually happened. I'm sure some of the relationships and some of the small little tiny details didn't happen, but it's a very factual movie. And again, Tom Hanks. This is the third movie I think on my list with Tom Hanks in it, so there's definitely a trend here. Kevin Bacon's in this movie, Bill Paxton, Ed Harris. It's just an amazing movie. It's action packed. It's based on a true story. The character development is incredible, and it's there's an impressive cast on this movie. So if you haven't seen it, please watch it for me, and let me know what you think of it. That's you can watch all the other movies, leave your feedback. But if you haven't watched Apollo 13, I would really love it if you could watch it and then come back and leave your comments on it and tell me what you think about it. Tell me what you didn't like about it. Tell me what you did like about it. I'd really love to know that. So I've done all my top 15. I really appreciate you guys watching the top 15, but I have two honorable mentions that I want to talk about. And I'm just going to bring them up here. So the first honorable mention I have is August Rush. So this is the other musical, I guess you could say. It's not really musical, but it is. So August Rush is about a man and a woman who are together, and she has to give up her child, and the man and the woman are both extremely musically gifted. I think it's actually been probably 10 years since I watched this, but I do really like it, and that's why it's an honorable mention. But the father specifically is an incredible talent musically, and they lose touch with their son. They never meet him, kind of, and the boy actually grows up never knowing his parents, but has a love for music and has an extreme talent for music. And it's kind of about the story on both sides. It's pretty special. It's emotional. It's definitely emotional. I would highly recommend you watch it if you like music and if you like cool stories. The other honorable mention I have on here is Gladiator. I really wanted to include something kind of in that Spartan Greek kind of world. There's been a lot of movies based around that. Troy, Alexandria, Alexandria I think it's called. A couple other ones, but Gladiator to me, like this movie is huge, absolutely just massive. Russell Crowe's best performance probably. It was really intense. Like there were moments where you're on your edge of your seat, just kind of wondering what the hell is going to happen. Like it was a pretty revolutionary movie. It was fantastic. I can't really explain the story too much without giving anything away, but basically the character that Russell Crowe plays, he gets demoted down to nothing, and he has to kind of survive. That's basically it. So thank you guys so much for watching this. I really appreciate it. I know there's a lot of lovers of movies out there, and if you are, and if you want to take the time, I would love it if you could leave your top 15 favorite movies in the comments, because I really read all the comments, and I really like to see insight from you guys. And if you have any recommendations, feel free to jot it down in the comments as well, and I'll let you know if I watched it or not. I'll try and comment back to as many comments as I can. But thanks guys for watching. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos on movies, or maybe I can do like a TV series version of this, let me know in the comments as well. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video. Adios.